Hello, I'm Matt Deckard, and wanted to get into a few details here. You have everybody's talking about Patrick Stewart coming back to Star Trek. Not a big deal. Months and months of them saying he's coming back. Problem is, they eradicated the universes within. Like J.J. Abrams created that new timeline, so his future is kind of in question. Then you have CBS, who invented a whole new timeline for Star Trek. So, people have been bringing up different storylines for the 5 new series that CBS says they're going to do. And I have my own ideas for new CBS story arcs, perhaps, for the series. They want to bring up 5 different series. I hope they do an animated one. I don't think they will, but I hope they do. Number one, thought about this, wrote them down. A story arc about somebody who I heard Roddenberry said was apocryphal, Star Trek V itself, but an arc about Sybok, Spock's brother, and how he originally started that massive cult, and how he had to flee Vulcan, and what happened to the rest of the cult members. Was it just him? What's going on? But why not do a story arc going back, talking about Vulcan, how Sybok had to, start that cult, how they came down on him, why they may have thought it was a little too much like what was going on when the Romulans broke apart from the Vulcan race. That was centuries before. This is very current day because it has to have happened within the time period between Enterprise and the original series. You could even have a nice tight ending where there's a tearjerker ending where Spock is there being stalwart. He's half Vulcan. Father always said he was too emotional because he's half human. Having Mikey Spock there, she's just torn because she is a full human, but she's trying to be as stalwart as her brother, who's half human, but he's very emotional. As they're crying, full-blood Vulcan brother Sybok is forced off the planet, and he's in tears. That's one story. I like that one. It would be a good arc. Trying to mix it in with more spatial stuff and sci-fi different stories in between and showing the Federation. Writers got to work on that. Story number 2. Return of the Herc. The Herc are... There's always been a lot of talk about the Herc and how the Klingons were, they're this planet, peaceful people perhaps, and then all of a sudden they're raided and they were enslaved by this race called the Herc. Never seen them, but when the Klingons finally freed themselves from the slavery of the Herc, the story goes that they took the technology from the Herc and they built their empire and grew out and just didn't want to be controlled again by another species. Now, this story I'm talking about would be as though there's a planet that's, maybe it's in a nebula, hidden away, nobody's seen it before, but when the Klingon rebellion toward the Herc came about, this one planet with Herc on it that had Klingons as slaves decided, let's lock ourselves out, let's hide ourselves, and no communication. So this is centuries later. The Klingons and the Herc on that planet, slavery of the Klingons ended. They became a peaceful culture working both together, and it's at a point where the Klingons decided we want to start traveling in space again. And the Klingon population's maybe a little more than the Herc on the planet, but as they venture out, they run into, finally, Klingons that are present-day Klingons that are warriors, and they learn of what's going on, and they decide they want to eradicate this soft Klingon, variant race that's from this planet of the Herc, and they want to find the Herc planet and eradicate it as well. And I just think that, let me read some of what I wrote here before. A Herc race on the planet that once enslaved them has sworn off interstellar travel from the time of the revolt, and they're ending all contact with other worlds. Can these peaceful Klingons rejoin their former colleagues? Will this begin a war of hide and seek when they are discovered, pushing the Empire to find the planet to destroy it and wipe out the Klingons they see as inferior? That's pretty much the concept of it all. I think it would make a good series, and we never get to see the Herc. That's just, we never do anyway. So that's number 2. Number 3, this would have to be set in the Prime universe before the CBS reboot universe. And it would have to negate the Kelvin timeline as well, which is still in Prime universe. After the destruction of Praxis, the Federation, still Klingon moon of Praxis, right? It orbits Kronos. The Federation still has a highly weaponized fleet. It's post-Cold War. And this would be about them dismantling that fleet in a way as they become more peaceful with the Klingons. And we can see how Starfleet went back to exploring more so, softened up everything between the years. Just a post-Star Trek VI, pre-Next Generation series, based probably on a planet that's in the neutral zone, but just covering that transition of taking in refugees from the Klingon homeworld, finding out how to distribute them through Klingon territory, but working with the Federation. And, problems and this and that ensue in between with Klingons that don't want this to happen and Klingons that do, and the Federation, but mainly about the refugee crisis from a planet that has been pretty much totaled, and who's living there still in his toxic environment, trying to get off of it, and how Earth and the other planets in the Federation are dealing with them as they do not want to become part of the Federation. That would be 3. 4. Something set within CBS's new universe of Discovery. And a show, we'd call it Star Trek. It would open on the, opens up on year 4 of the NCC 1701's 5-year mission. And we see, it's kind of the end of that. We also see the full 5th year of the mission. And next year after that, we actually see Kirk deciding whether or not he wants to continue with another 5-year mission, perhaps, who he wants to bring in as crew, have some intermittent interruptions from, or meetings with previous crew members that he hasn't brought on yet. We know that in the cartoon series you have Rix, the 3-legged guy with the 3rd arm, who comes in as a helmsman, but let's develop that and see if that's still canon, see why that's still canon, and cover it in this new universe canon that CBS has created, but just show Kirk going through that process and have some cameos of crew members that are no longer on the ship, perhaps, in between on star bases and other places. Now, the 5th idea I have just been thinking about right now, and I would have it as a ship that, and it's going to be a little more spooky, actually classic science fiction, more Twilight Zone-esque Star Trek. You'd always have that alien green hand pop out of nowhere, and one thing that I see that's missing is there's too much technical stuff going on in Trek, too much science rather than science fiction. And what I love about shows like Star Trek was the mystery, the kookiness, and the science fiction. So to have a show where all of a sudden a planet pops up out of nowhere, the ship is befuddled by it, completely different ship, nothing connected to the Enterprise, something new, and they look at it as a Class M, can hold human life form types. They beam down a full complement away team of 6 people. As soon as they beam down, a few minutes later, the ship that they beam down from, no contact whatsoever, gone. This is what the series is about. They are stranded. They are not just stranded. they feel like they've been abandoned and on a planet that nobody knew existed. And as they go through the course of the series, they'll run into maybe people from their own ship that have, what do you call it? Not skydive, but orbitary. They've escaped their own ship or other ships that have crashed there, finding out that this planet was maybe from a civilization that has been an ancient civilization that had amazing technology, but they're gone. Other civilizations have spawned there. They're middling, but this would be an interesting story just to have 6 people trying to figure out what's going on this mysterious planet, and ultimately trying to find a way to contact anything off that planet. Anyway, that's my theories right now for new shows. I'm happy Patrick Stewart's perhaps coming back. I'm Matt Deckard, and I'll talk to you later.